All right, welcome back to Coast Rugby. We had pretty amazing weekend of games. Lots to get into. How did you enjoy it, Ella?
Almost too much to get into. We're sitting here trying to figure out what we're talking about. We could go for hours, but we've promised ourselves we'll keep this relatively snappy when we'll hopefully come back later in the week with more of the predictions and insights for the games ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, so much to go through. Like 2 really amazing test matches on the Saturday. Australia-Wales was super exciting as well. And then a bunch of other North against South matches going on. Not quite a clean sweep for the South, but definitely showing their muscle over the weekend.
Definitely. They said, you come to our shores, we're making it tough for you. So
yeah, except Argentina, but we'll get onto that later on. So only one place to start, England, New Zealand, first game of the weekend. I dragged myself out of my tent at the Grand Prix with a very sore head.
Can we all applaud Andy's dedication this weekend to watching as much of the games as possible while at the F1?
It was such a good weekend. Like the F1 is a great day out. Or we spent 3 days there. Great 3 days out. But it was wet. It was cold. It was very British, and the coverage in that part of the world is horrendous. So I was like standing with the video I did about England, New Zealand. I was standing on top of we were camping on a golf course, and one of the tees, it's kind of raised. For some reason, if you stood on the raised tee, you could get signal. So I was just walking in circles on top of the tee, trying to get my phone to connect. It was not easy.
This is dedication, people. For that, you must like and subscribe. But
quite a few people braved the weather in the morning, and we all went down to the golf the clubhouse, and they had a big screen set up outside, and they were showing England. So quite a few of us were down there.
And what a match to watch, hey? A 1-point test match to kick off the All Blacks season after a 1-point test match to finish it.
Yeah. Nice symmetry there.
Yeah, this time it was a win, so I'll take it. Maybe, I guess, the first standout for me, a great showing from Stephen Petafeta, who came in, maybe a question mark for a lot of people, maybe the surprise selection. Silky feet, some great vision. But in saying that, we learned, I think, that Beauden Barrett, all 124 caps, worth his weight in gold. Like, you could see the switch when he came on, right?
Absolutely. And what I loved about it was he didn't do anything overly complicated. He came on and he was like, right, sensible things to win the game, get ourselves up the field, put ourselves in a good position. Like, that's all it's sometimes what those class players do is so simple. It's amazing to watch.
Doing the simple things, but just doing them better than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that Razor knew that it was going to go that way?
I kind of felt that way because, we were talking about his comments pre-match, where he was talking about, well, I want a back row that's good on both sides of the ball. Obviously, wanted to focus on the breakdown more than just carrying. And it's almost like he knew that as the game tightened up in the second half, what would be really, really important was just going to be field position. It was going to be that competition. And his selection and the way the team played was completely prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't look flustered, I was flustered, but I think they spoke, particularly after the game, they were proud of the effort they put in. There's lots to learn and to take away from this game, but they never really looked like too stressed about the situation. Maybe it is they've been in these one-pointers before.
Maybe. And I think it's that All Blacks culture though as well, isn't it? Like, even whatever the situation is, you try not to show that you're stressed, right? You try and get your heart rate down. You try and make sure that you're thinking sort of calmly and cleanly. And they definitely seem to do that. And actually, it was in that second half, England kind of, if there was one big criticism you'd have of the way they played, because they played really, really well. I'm not trying to get down on them, but they lost their heads, I think, a little bit in that last 15, 20 minutes. Like, they started competing way too hard at the breakdown. They kind of played into the All Blacks' hands a little bit. They started giving away penalties. And I think that's just out of wanting it so badly. But the All Blacks seem to avoid that pitfall. Maybe because they're the home team and the expectation was more on them. Maybe it's easier not to get grabby and suddenly start trying to win the game every time you get anywhere near the ball.
Yeah, that is definitely what you saw. And they even spoke about it, that last 20 minutes was where the All Blacks really managed to seal the deal. So I think they can be impressed with that. Someone who I thought was maybe quieter than expected was Samipeni Finau. Everyone talked we had talked about it, right? Like him coming in off Super Rugby, he was going to be an enforcer. He was going to kind of throw himself at 10s, early, late, hard, fast. And that wasn't really what we saw from him. Obviously, there'd been a bit of a memo from the coach, I think, around you're getting stuck in those rucks.
Yeah.
But in saying that, while he had a quiet night, he also had a clean clean record in terms of penalties, which was something people were concerned about as well. So I think we're seeing him find his feet at test level. Maybe we'll see him push himself a little bit more physically this week at Eden Park. I don't know. But those Lucies, the Battle of the Lucies, are highly anticipated, and I think it delivered overall.
Oh, for sure. He won a couple, didn't he, Finau? He definitely won one penalty at least. Like, I thought he had a really good game. Like you say, kind of quiet, but just doing the grunt work in the background. But I mean, England won loads of turnovers during the game. Like their back row are real turnover machines.
Absolutely.
Cunningham South, we hyped him up in the build up to the game. He was excellent. When they get him fit enough that he can play 80 minutes at test level, that's a really terrifying prospect, because he does fade. I mean, he gets through so much work. It's not surprising that he fades. But I thought Ben Earl actually was sort of uncharacteristically. There were a few errors that he wouldn't normally make. I mean, he got stepped by Perifetta as well, but I think that was more. I'd give that more to Perifetta than I'd say it's a mistake from Earl. But yeah, it definitely delivered. And Ardy had the last laugh, I think.
He did have the last laugh. He didn't even look like he'd been, not in New Zealand rugby for the last 6 months. So glad that he's fresh. Gosh, he's what a player, honestly. Actually, you know who I guess doesn't get talked about because he's such a staple of the English team sometimes, and he got a shout out from Scott Robertson. Maro Itoje was huge.
He was incredible.
Just awesome. What a like, he's got to be up there in terms of men who have pulled on that white jersey. He's an absolute asset.
For sure. I think because he have that crazy, similar thing to James Ryan. He had that crazy thing where it took him like a year to lose a game of elite test rugby. Like he came straight in and won every game back to back. And then maybe since between World Cup cycles, between 2019 and 2023, he had a bit of a dip. He probably wasn't playing at his best and got a lot of criticism actually, but he's massively come back in the last couple of years. Like he can go all day. He's making big contributions constantly in the game, and he's kind of stamped out. He used to get penalized a lot. He's kind of stamped that out. Like he doesn't get penalized nearly as much. He doesn't hurt the team nearly as much. So yeah, we're definitely seeing peak Maro again. And him and Martin is an amazing lock combination. Like they give you everything.
They did kind of assert themselves over the All Blacks line out. For a while there, I thought the All Blacks were showing up pretty well, and then just throughout the course of the game, it kind of faded away, but maybe a bit to be expected, and surely a work on for next week. Next week? It's this week. That's scary. What about old Finn Baxter?
Oh, young Finn Baxter. Young Finn Baxter. Yeah, he was brilliant, wasn't he? Really thrown in at the deep end.
What a way to learn against De Groot at De Groot Stadium. He's an Otago boy, and then obviously Tyrell Lomax as well. So no, that was a big showing from him. I was listening to, I think it was Dan Cole, his podcast, and he was saying sometimes it's better when you get thrown in when you don't expect to, because you don't have that time to think about it all, to kind of get in your head. You just go out and play, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. Like I watch a lot of Harlequins, and in Europe this season, 2 really tough away games Quinn's had against massive front rows, away to Bordeaux and away to Toulouse. And he was brilliant in both of them. Like he doesn't take a backward step. He doesn't look like it, but he absolutely smashes people. Like he never, I've never seen him given a new challenge and not step up to it. So I wasn't surprised. Brilliant performance from him. And for England, it's like they've been struggling for a loose head, and now they've got another one, and it just shows sometimes you just have to give someone a shot, and you don't really know how it's going to go. It could be a disaster, but if it works out for you, then amazing.
Yeah, I feel like Steve Borthwick will be feeling pretty happy with himself over that one.
Yeah, I think so. Because against Japan, they picked Bevan Rodd, and I was like, surely Rodd's not getting in over Baxter for the test. But then Borthwick had those comments which sort of suggested that the Japan team might be the team that we saw in this game. So I was thrilled to see Baxter in, and definitely grabbed it with both hands.
Absolutely. And I guess we've seen a lot of commentary from pundits, fans, ex-players, all sorts about how this was the golden opportunity for England to win and that they let it slip away. I feel like I want to challenge that a little bit because I feel like it's just, yes, it was a great chance. The odds were certainly in their favor in terms of a unknown All Blacks team who had very little time together. They were playing in Dunedin. They had obviously had a lot more time together as a team, a lot more cohesion, even a lot more time under one coach.
Yeah.
So it was a good opportunity, absolutely. But I don't think it's one that got away necessarily because I also think that the opportunity is still there for them this week, 100%.
I definitely agree. Like, they were so close. And the thing is, it's not like we'll come on to Ireland later, but if Ireland had managed to win that game on Saturday, it would have been a bit of a robbery, right? Like, it would have been hanging in there and kind of sneaking it at the end. That's not what happened. Like, England were the better team for large parts of the game. I reckon they will really fancy a bite at that record next week. And it's, so much of it's going to be in hindsight. If they get smashed next week, then everyone will be like, oh yeah, this is the one that got away. But if they're close again next week, then they're just two good teams. They're on a decent level and they'll get each other at some point.
Exactly. I'm just hoping it's not at Eden Park. I don't think I could take it if that record were to fall at Eden Park to England. How much pressure do you think?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, would that be like national meltdown territory?
It's hard to say. Losing there to the Aussies would be pretty bad. How much pressure do you think is on the All Blacks, though? Because having to hold on to that record and not be the team that lets that one go, I feel like that's worse than being a team going to play the All Blacks there.
Yeah. Like we were talking before the recording, England can go into this like nothing to lose, lads. And also everything to gain, like a massive slice of history to gain. If you win and you are the team that ends the unbeaten record at Eden Park, like you really will go down in history if you can manage that. And they'll be so confident based on how the game went. Like, I think in whatever they say externally, I'm sure internally the talk in England is like, look, we didn't take our chances when we had them. We lost control of the game towards the end, but it was there for them. And if they play well again next week, it could be there for them next week too.
100%. And I think the other thing that's important is that the Lions, in the record of 48 tests or whatever, it's 48 tests unbeaten, but that includes 2 draws. One of those draws was the Lions team in 2017, which included Maro Itoje, Dan Cole, Joe Marler, who won't be playing, and I'm missing someone.
Jamie George,
the captain. How dare I? So those 4 players.
How good was he, by the way?
Oh, I love that man. I think he is the best choice for captain of that team. I think he's a wholesome, but obviously a very philly tough player on the field. But I just think he is the right person to be the captain of this team. I almost am like, I could be an England fan.
Switch Rugby had a great tweet where he's like, I love that George is one of the best hookers in the world, and somehow he still like manages one line out throw to somebody's shins every single game.
That was an eyesore. That was an eyesore. But those 4 players were in that Lions team that drew with the All Blacks there, and they're the only players who have ever played at Eden Park in this English team. So they don't necessarily know what it's like to win there, but they know what it's like not to lose. And then the rest of them have never played there. So I don't think they've got this kind of huge burden hanging over them of, I've been to Eden Park and every time I've been there, I've lost. They're kind of just like, it's another ground. So game on, absolutely. Missing injuries. Are there any injuries we need to talk about? Probably TJ Perenara for the All Blacks.
That's
how gutting was that?
It was awful to see. Was it the same knee?
It was his Achilles that he had done 2 years ago, but it looked like a knee. But by all accounts, it sounds like it's not that bad. They're just looking for a return to play timeline. Like people have said they've seen him out scootering around on the viaduct and stuff. So he's
by the way, great. You should always shout out referees when something good happens. How quickly he made the decision to just be like, no, we're stopping the play. Like, because it looked bad. It looked really, really bad.
And he was trying to hobble on.
Yeah. Well, he always would, right? But yeah, fair play. Good to see like player welfare being taken into account.
Yeah, absolutely. And so TJ out for the week, at least this week, as far as we know. That means bringing in potentially Finlay Christie to start after a real mixed bag, I would say, in his 40 minutes on the field. Would you agree? Does that look like a big hole or a week for the All Blacks now?
It did a bit, right? Because it's like, I don't think running the tempo and really pushing the tempo and getting the team to move quickly is really Christie's thing, is it? Like, he's more of a kicker defender, he's very good at those things. But yeah, you would if I was Razor, I'd be thinking, do we need someone who can push the tempo a bit more from the start and bring Christie on towards the end of the game?
Well, I think there's definitely a question in that, because the person with the tempo in the team is Cortez Latimer. He is kind of in that Aaron Smith mold, or as actually I think Jason Holland likened him to, a little bit of a Tabata Kerbalo type.
Okay.
He's got a bit of that pace.
Yeah.
And the positive, I think, of starting him is that he's the number 9 for the Chiefs. So he has played with Damian McKenzie all season. So there is that combination, which could maybe be useful. And then you bring Christie on again to bring the accuracy with the kick, because that was a strength in that second half. And then he was pretty good at the breakdown in terms of defensively. So maybe that's something that Razor looks into for this week. We shall see.
Yeah. And for England, Baxter starts. But other than that, they seem to come through with a clean bill of health, I think.
We love that. No cards, no major injuries. Well done, everybody.
Quick word as well. A lot of Kiwis in my comments on TikTok who had never heard of George Furbank. They know who he is now. What a game.
They certainly do. They certainly do. And a lot of my girlfriends know who George Furbank is too. They were sitting up and taking notes. They quite liked him. They were saying it was funny watching that. I've been on this crusade of rugby needs to do more with its hotties, like hotties to the front. But it was funny with my friends watching the national anthems, and they were like, oh, they really do like a hottie sandwich where they just put all the good looking ones as they like pan down the line.
Oh, God. Do you know, it is kind of, is it the Spanish rugby team on TikTok have exploded for those exact reasons? Like, there is definitely a thirst market for rugby. And I don't know if it's something you'd ever convince the people at the top to get into, but it's definitely there.
Well, it's hard, right? Like, as a woman, I don't want to be like objectifying people, but there's definitely a balance of being able to do it well. And I think Spanish TikTok does it quite well.
That's it. We don't object to objectifying people. It's just when it's done badly.
When it's done badly.
Yeah, that's what we don't like. But yeah, really, really excited for the game at Eden Park. I really enjoyed that first game. I love that it was kind of the two halves of the game felt really different. We got to see like two different sides of both teams. It was brilliant.
It was brilliant. It was a real display of skill in all areas of the game, which was awesome. A proper test match, and I was not what I expected. But I was happy with it anyway.
Before we move on quickly, you sent me that interview with Razor after the game. How good was that?
What a breath of fresh air. I think we knew this is what he would bring, but to see it in action, and I guess as a representative of our nation and our team, it made me very happy. And he just loves rugby. That's the takeaway, right? He loves his rugby.
Yeah. And he just seems like a good ambassador. Like you told me to check out that documentary series. He's so forthcoming, very open, like sort of very emotionally intelligent character. And I thought all that came through in the post-match interview as well. Like, he wasn't trying to pretend that he wasn't trying to project any kind of an image. He was just like, whoa, geez, that was close.
And you could see it in the box, right? He was kind of whacking things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of enjoy this. It's as much of a spectacle as the actual game itself, right? People are going, what's Razor doing up in the box? Because he's that kind of big of a character. So no, a good first outing, a pass mark, I think, for Razor on the first outing for sure.
For sure. And it made me think when I saw him in the box, I was like, I've been thinking about how All Blacks fans have wanted him for years. Like the last 4 years, basically, people were like, why isn't he in here yet? But on his side, he must have been sitting there thinking like, I am going to get this job eventually. But he's just been sitting and waiting. He must have been so excited to finally get off the mark.
Oh, just to put that blazer on. He was ironing his shirt and getting all excited, and then very quickly overtaken by nerves. So yeah, a long time coming for him, and a win. Couldn't really ask for much more. Like, yes, it was by 1 point. Yes, it was scrappy, but a win's a win, and that silences most critics.
In the history books, that's all it'll say. And how about this for a great segue? A long time coming. Rassie Erasmus has his first win over Ireland.
He's done it. That was like the real... What's the saying? It was really not the devil on his shoulder. You know what I'm trying to say. It was bugging him. It was bugging him.
Yes, it definitely was bugging him, but it won't anymore. What did you think? It was a good match, wasn't it?
It was ferocious. The pace, which was potentially unexpected from South Africa. We've already spoken about it, but it's very clear. The Tony Brown playbook, the width with which South Africa are playing massive, and I would love to see more of Sia Khaleesi and Peter Seftotoy on the wing.
Yeah, that was great.
So good. Maybe we can talk about the atmosphere at Loftus first. That was unreal.
Yeah, they were up for it. Like the anthems were amazing. Those guys who run out first, like the dancers who run out before everything when they're playing the music, all of them looked in good enough nick to put on a jersey. They looked like they could just go and play. It was amazing.
Get them in there, Russie.
Yeah, and yeah, brilliant atmosphere.
The DJs were going hard.
Oh, the DJ. We'll talk about the DJ, but that guy's a menace. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, watching Jesse Creel just galloping through midfield, creating space. Is he in the competition or in the conversation, I should say, for World's Best 13 at the moment?
I think that was some performance from him, and you saw the full spectre of his athleticism, I thought.
Yeah.
And it's freakish and alarming.
At the moment, looks like he has an extra half a second compared to everybody else when he gets the ball. Yeah, he looked very, very good. I mean, South Africa in patches, there were bits of the game where I was like, if they can figure out how to play like this all the time, literally no one else is ever going to win another World Cup. Because the mixture of power and dynamism, I don't know if anybody else has those players. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if anyone else can play that game, really.
No, absolutely agree. It's giving scary hours. It's giving 2015 All Blacks, but scarier.
Yeah.
Truly.
2015 All Blacks with a bigger pack.
Yeah, 100%.
Although we can talk about it, still questions at 10, right? Wasn't a perfect day for Pollard, although some of his passing was brilliant.
Which we don't usually see from him, right? Even just seeing him on that service game is kind of rare. So to see him kind of up in the attack structure, nice. But yeah, off the tee, one of his worst.
Well, it's like there's a thing with him because he scores clutch penalties for South Africa all the time. We all kind of forget that his career kicking stats, he's not like elite, but he is elite in important games, right? That's his brand. So maybe we shouldn't be as surprised when he has a bit of an off day. I mean, fortunately for him, Crowley had an off day too. Didn't kick particularly well himself. But I sort of feel like when both 10s do it, it sort of cancels each other out, you know? It was similar in the All Blacks and England game. Like Marcus Smith was copping a bit of stick after the match, but it's like, I'm pretty sure Mackenzie left 6 out there as well. So
yeah, I think it ended up being 8 points that Marcus Smith left behind and 7 that DMAC left behind.
Okay.
So yeah,
well, there you go.
That pretty much. Absolutely. And the scrum, I guess, a talking point as always. What do you have to say on that?
Ireland actually did okay for a lot of the game. I thought we were going to get pulverized in the scrum up and down the whole time. But we did all right. It maybe looked like we had some sneaky tricks up our sleeve to try and avoid getting in too many scrum contests. But yeah, that big one at the end was insult to injury, wasn't it?
I kind of had to like look away a little bit. Like I was like, oh.
It made me think of that Simpsons thing with the kids, like, oh, he's already dead, you know, he's crying and the clown is beating up that old man. Like, the game was over. I don't know why they had to do that to us.
As we've talked about though, and over the last couple of weeks about the Springboks and their kind of foot on the throat, never say die. That was vintage Springboks and that attitude there.
It was, but you know what? On the other side of it, Ireland never gave up. I was so impressed by, like, in a game where lots of decisions, I'm not commenting on the decisions, but lots of decisions go against you. You know, anyone playing in a match like that is going to feel like maybe a bit aggrieved the way things are turning out. And it's very easy to fold then, like to lose your head or to stop trying quite as hard and just to let the game play out. But they never did that. Like, they fought for absolutely every inch, even when the game was over. And I know a lot of the time you're like, well, the professional athletes, of course they should do that, but teams don't always do that. And yeah, it was great to see. And they managed to, they came up with some brilliant moments. Like the Osborne try was absolute class from everyone involved. Brilliant score when we were under loads of pressure. So I think Ireland might have come through with a few injuries and with losing the game, but pride very much intact.
Oh, 100%. That last 10 minutes, in theory, they shouldn't have been in a position to have won the game, you know?
Yeah.
So they were. They were, and then they created that for themselves. So, yeah, they move into next week. I keep saying next week. It's definitely this week. They move into this week, I think, knowing that it's still for the taking. And a 1-1, would be, I think, a pass.
Oh, I won much more than a pass. Like, considering we've only ever won one test there in history before, a 1-1 would be a fantastic result. And I think the injuries make it very difficult for the second test. But I think the way the first test played out, Ireland will believe that, like, if they can show that grit again, if you can hang in there. And like we saw club sides doing this against South African teams, like especially Glasgow doing it against the Bulls in the final of the URC, right? The Bulls were on top a lot, but if you can just hang in there and you can back your defense, they can't keep that pace up for 80 minutes. No team can. And you will get opportunities. And then it's just about being clinical and taking the opportunities. But it says a lot about the quality of the South African team that your game plan has to be like, yes, we'll be second best, but we just have to take the moments when they arrive. Because I really don't think there's any other way you can approach it.
Definitely not when you're playing in South Africa either.
Yeah.
Should we talk about James Lowe? Do we dare talk about James Lowe?
James, I felt so sorry for him because some really worldy moments in that game. Like we said, for the Osborne try, fantastic. For the disallowed try, the finish was brilliant.
I had like in my notes, James Lowe try, unreal, like exclamation mark, and then like within 4 minutes of having to go back and delete it.
Everyone, so we found somewhere to sit around the racetrack at the Grand Prix, and they'd put England in the Euros up on the big screens, so everyone was watching the football, and it was a really quiet moment of the game. And me and my dad were sat at the back, and when James Lowe got through, we both fucking jumping up and down, slapping each other's backs and stuff, and everyone was like, "What is going on?" And then the stream cut out, and then we had to follow the rest on BBC Sport, and it was just like bad to worse. Try disallowed. Colby try. Oh, it was horrible.
That Colby try, if we talk about finishing, right, and taking small moments, that's the epitome of it.
Literally, you can't give him a sniff of a sniff. Like, he's like an Energizer bunny. He's just always going, and if you make a mistake, he'll be there. A brilliant finish from him. And I felt so sorry for Lowe, because if, refereeing decision goes another way for the disallowed try, and then he let that ball go out, he could have been looking at contributing to one of the all-time great Ireland wins. They could have pulled that robbery, I think, if those two things had gone for them. Because I think we talked about the scrum. The bomb squad definitely delivered in that final scrum. But, when they emptied the bench and they brought them on, South Africa lost a lot of continuity. Like, yeah. I don't think it actually worked that well for them. They lost the first scrum as well, which was funny. I wonder if, like, now that they're playing this more joined up game, and they're trying to throw the ball around a bit more, if maybe replacing the entire pack in one go isn't necessarily the way to go, right? And bringing a bunch of fresh players on at the same time. Because I definitely thought they lost a bit of momentum after the bomb squad came on.
Well, and I think even just this question of, I guess, a more expansive attack from the Springboks and what that means when they're not known for bringing fatigue into the game very much. So how will they cope with that as well when they're asking much more of their forwards, who normally can just exert themselves 100% into the core roles of being a forward? But now if you're going to ask them to be carrying out on the flanks, doing these barnstorming runs, you're going to see that fatigue come in a lot quicker. So maybe we're going to see some changes in the strength and conditioning routine of the Springboks. Who knows?
The chairman of Racing 92 will be happy to hear that.
And confirm. Sia Khaleesi is not fat nor transparent. Did you?
No, he is not. Oh dear, he was brilliant, wasn't he, in that first half?
He's like Ma'anonu. Well, actually, probably even more so on another level. But Ma'a could have a pretty average Super Rugby season, turn up in the All Blacks jersey after barely doing any preseason, and just become an absolute freak. And Sia kind of has that same energy in the sense that there's something in that jersey for him that just propels him to another level.
Test match animals. That's what Ian McGeechan used to call them. Like, they are rare enough, but he's definitely one. And South Africa have a few, to be fair. Like, there's so many players you could go. How good was Willie Leroux?
You maybe a bit of it. I don't want to say an unsung hero, but he maybe doesn't get the plaudits he sometimes deserves for his role in directing them around the park. Like every single player.
Yeah, he's crucial for them, isn't he? Like, especially when they've got Pollard, because you haven't necessarily got that invention at 10, but it doesn't matter when you've got someone who can just step in, and they both complement each other so well, right? You can have them both on at the same time. I do wonder in the second test if we see them try and develop another partnership of Libok and Sasha Feinberg. But I guess if you don't have Sasha on the bench, it's very hard to do the 6-2. So maybe that's going to relegate him to a near future on the bench. I'm not sure.
When was the last time we saw South Africa do a 5-3 on the bench? Do we know? That's probably too big of a question for us not to have the stat at hand.
I would have thought pre-World Cup for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like they had the 6-2 at least every game in the World Cup.
I'm pretty sure they did a 6-2 for the Qatar Airways Cup where they absolutely dunced us.
Yeah. Well, no, they did the 7-1, didn't they?
I'm not going to lie. I turned that game off after like 10 minutes because it was so bad.
I think that's where they trialed the 7-1. And then they made a big thing afterwards of being like, oh, yeah, it was just a friendly. We wanted to try it out. And then it came back in the World Cup final. Yeah. It's definitely been a while. Although I'm thinking maybe for the Tonga game in the World Cup where they tried Pollard and they weren't sure about how fit he was, maybe they did a 5-3 that day to cover for that. But I'm not sure.
Cover for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess they talk so much about Sasha being kind of that generational talent coming in. How far are they willing to move in order to fit him into their game plan? Could we see a reversal back?
Yeah, because his value as that player on the bench is so big if you're going to try and play like that. Like to have someone who can literally cover 4 or 5 positions and cover them well is worth so much. But if he's that good, then surely you want to get him starting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, big questions.
That we're not paid to answer.
Very true. But I'd be very excited about the Rassie and Tony Brown era if I was a South Africa fan, based on what we've seen so far.
I'm excited to witness it. Like it just feels like we're on the cusp of more and more innovation, and where rugby can go, in a scary way though.
Very scary way. And looking ahead to the second test, the Irish injury list. It's not looking good. So definitely out. Dan Sheehan, who's done his ACL, which is really unfortunate. I can't help but feel like he plays too much rugby. I think he's obviously desperate to play a lot, but yeah, maybe they need to manage him a little bit better. Craig Casey. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that a takeaway from the game for me, I know that, South Africa are obviously in the URC too, but a lot of their big players, marquee players are in Japan. But Ireland looked tired, man.
Yeah.
Ragged. And you just do worry about the welfare of these players in seasons this long, traveling, I'm not just saying from Ireland to South Africa, I mean anywhere. Yeah. It actually is a huge burden to bear, and I worry for the bodies of these young people.
It's the way we play as well. Like it's such a high intensity ask. Every time you play for Ireland, they work so hard for every point because of the style of play, and you do wonder just how sustainable it is in the long term. But yeah, so poor old Dan Sheehan will be out for a while. I mean, at least he gets a rest. And at least like doing an ACL used to be a career ender, right? But the surgeries are so good now. Hopefully he's able to make a full recovery. Siya Kolisi did.
He did. He did.
So we'll hope for that. Casey obviously had that nasty one where his head hit the floor. I think I saw Farrell say he's okay. He was okay after the game, but a bit dazed and a bit out of it. So obviously,
I think he didn't know where he was.
Yeah. God. I mean, I wouldn't like to get body slammed by RG Snyman either. I don't think that would be very nice.
On international TV.
Yeah.
Playing there. Can someone talk to the broadcasters? I don't want to see that.
Yeah. So I'm surprised they haven't figured that out yet, because football's figured that out now since they've had those incidents with players having heart issues and stuff on the field. You just don't show it. It wasn't great that they showed it. They should have just got away. I mean, they did eventually, right? They started showing the crowd. Not sure how I feel about the DJ getting everyone to put the lights up in that moment. It's like you kind of need to distract people with something, so I sort of get it. And he wasn't there. I don't think there were any real fears for his immediate safety, right? It was clear he got knocked out, but the camera showed he was up and breathing and fine again pretty quickly. So hopefully there's nothing long-term there. But then the potential injuries are Henshaw, Aki, Porter, and Osborne. And Lowe. Lowe's got a bit of a thigh niggle as well. So that adds up to half the team, you know? And we're already missing Gibson Park. So yeah, if the second test was always a difficult job, it's mission impossible now. You know, it's really going to be difficult for missing all of those players. But it's a chance for other players to step up.
Yeah, we talked about Andy Farrell, you know, maybe not being so keen to roll the dice and to try new things, stick with the tried and true, but the dice has well and truly been rolled for him when you look at that injury list.
He's got no choice now.
Not at all.
But, you know, depth has always been a key issue for us. And Andy Farrell's built such an amazing base and such an amazing first team. And if he can start trying to get more players in there now, so much the better for it. But God, you hope it doesn't come. I weirdly, after that game, like I still feel kind of hopeful for next week. I think we showed that if you hang in there, the Springboks aren't maybe super clinical yet with the new style. So if you hang in there, there might be opportunities for you. But if we're missing those 6, it's going to be difficult.
It's like Mount Everest just like grew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's enough to take away. I wanted to shout out Jack Crowley, actually, particularly his work on defense. Just a real showing.
Yeah.
I was very impressed as someone who hasn't seen much of him since the Six Nations, really, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he has occasional off days with the T and he gets a lot of criticism for it. But in terms of like his all-round game, so I think he can also play 12. So he's got that kind of more physical side to him. But, you know, getting rushed by the biggest defense in the world, he mostly took it in stride. Brilliant pass to help set up the low try. And he's young and he's learning, you know. And the fact that we definitely missed Johnny Sexton. He's up there with O'Driscoll, probably as our greatest player ever. But the fact that we've basically made the transition seamlessly shows you how good Crowley is. And his ceiling is so high. He's got so much more to do. So, yeah, really excited to see him develop. And these minutes are super valuable for him.
Super valuable, 100%. Have we covered most of it?
I think so. Yeah, we're running out of time. All right. Quick one on Australia and Wales.
My words were, it's a win for Australia.
Yes.
And that's probably the most important thing to take out of it. It was a win, started the Joe Schmidt era off right, as they would have wanted, much to build on. I think standouts for me were Jake Gordon and then Liam Wright, the captain, and also Tom Wright, breaking ankles left, right, and centre. That
sidestep. I mean, I know Grady coming across, that's like the impossible job as a defender, right? Like, because the guy coming at you can just decide. He can make the decision and go, but lovely little double step anyway.
It was gorgeous. Beautiful to watch. I also think the other thing I was really happy to see was it was a really good crowd. So all these naysayers, all these negative Nancy's, rugby is not dead in Australia. It's going through a little challenge, but the fan base is still there. And I think people were actually, there might have been a little bit of excitement, you know, around seeing this new era under stable and mature leadership. So that was my takeaways from an Australian-ish perspective.
From a Welsh perspective, I actually haven't been quite down on them before the test. Like, they were in it until the Tom Wright try, you know? And there were a couple of moments where things had gone slightly differently. Like, who knows? You know, the disallowed try was correctly disallowed according to the rules, right? But the very fine margins there. And the little kick over for Josh Hathaway, if he had, you know, that's a case of if he was 6 inches further ahead of his man, it's a try. So there were moments there for them. Thomas did okay at 10, right?
Centers, that pairing of the halves was actually all right, I thought.
Yeah. For guys who have basically no caps, they did pretty well. So I definitely think there's shoots of green for Wales. But that loss and Fiji's win over Georgia puts them out of the top 10 for the first time since rankings have even existed.
When did rankings begin-ish?
Only like the 90s. This is not that long ago.
Well, still, though, significant.
Still, yeah. It really shows the extent of how bad things have gotten for them. But for the first time after a game, I'm thinking if I were a Welsh fan, I'd be feeling I'd have some proper hope. Because I think they weren't miles off it. And if they can be a little bit better next week, they have every chance of taking a 1-1 draw and going home and actually feeling quite good about it.
It sounds like we're saying that the Northern Hemisphere, they've all been beaten in those 3 tests this weekend, but no one is looking out of the race by any means.
No, the gap doesn't look massive. It's so interesting as well because like New Zealand are in a rebuild, Australia in a rebuild, Wales in a rebuild. It's not like a normal international window, is it? There's a lot more variables.
I don't want to get too far off tangent, but I feel like we've moved, or maybe it's because I'm watching more Northern Hemisphere rugby, but I feel like we're really starting to see what it looks like when we operate in a cycle, right?
Yes.
We're actually seeing clear confines of like rebuild phase for XYZ. It's super interesting. And I think we're going to see more and more of it, particularly as we get towards when we have that League Nations.
The global season is going to standardize that for everybody, right? So I definitely think you're right. I think it's going to almost force international teams to start working in those 4-year cycles if they aren't already. I think most of them are anyway. But
you know who hates it? We do.
You just want to win every game.
That is absolutely correct.
So very quickly, there was one holdout for the Northern Hemisphere. France took a reserve team to Argentina and turned them over. It was a very strong Argentinian team as well.
Yeah, they had all their kind of players back, right? Because it was in the window.
Pretty much fully loaded. And France had a lot of... there's a very sore subject in Ireland, Anton Frisch, who was at Munster, who has a lot of people thought deserved the Ireland call-up, has decided to move to France, got in the France team, scored on his debut. So, yeah.
Now you know how we feel watching James.
And Baptiste Serran as well, the scrum half for France. Absolutely brilliant. It's very hard to get a look in when Antoine Dupont is ahead of you in the pecking order, but Serran is some player. He really is.
That's wild. It sounds like the French seconds could be a first in many other countries. It
does sound that way. They've got a lot of controversy off the field, though, on tour, which we won't go into too much, but Melvin Jaminet saying some just outrageously racist things. And they've also got a couple of players in trouble with the law. But yeah, I think you can go read about it if you want, but France aren't going to come out of this tour very well on the PR stakes anyway.
Oh, dear. Well, on that note, then, should we go to maybe a great PR story, which is Italy took themselves off to the islands. They went to Samoa and they got beaten.
They did.
They got beaten. How good for Samoa?
It's amazing for Samoa. When I looked at the teams, I saw the Italy team and I was like, wow, this is the first time I've ever looked at like a touring Italian side and thought, oh, that's a good team. But yeah, brilliant from the Italians. And the Fijians are brilliant from the Samoans. Sorry, what am I even saying? And the Fijians had a great weekend as well.
Yes, they did, beating Georgia. And then obviously they moved up in the world rankings, overtaking Wales, which I think is actually, I know that this is the first time Wales have gone out of the top 10, but there was a bit of movement between Fiji and Wales at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Pre-World Cup, during World Cup, within that top 10. So Fiji up on top again.
Yeah, Fiji moving up in the world. It's great to see.
I didn't actually watch that game, but I wonder, I'm pretty sure Richie Mo'unga's nephew, Isaiah Armstrong-Ravula, he plays for them. He's at number 10, so I wonder how he went. I need to have a little look.
Interesting, because I saw they had a game recently. It was against the Barbarians, wasn't it? Where Caleb Muntz came back. They missed him so much during the World Cup, and to have him back as a top quality option at 10. And if that guy has any of Richie's genes in him, they're probably onto a winner as well.
Yeah, because Caleb Muntz came back towards the end of Super Rugby, and he was coming off the bench with Isaiah starting.
Okay.
So there'd be quite a good Isaiah's pretty young. He's like 21 or something. Obviously, Muntz is quite young too, but it'd be pretty good 1-2 punch, one off the bench. That'd be pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, sorry to rush the end, but I'm late for work, so I got to bounce.
We got to go and do the things that we get paid to do.
yeah, go do the actual jobs that we squeeze these around.
The actual jobs.
Great talking to you.
Back.
Yes.
Probably later in the week once the teams have been announced, talk through everything, that story's there, and give you our predictions, which we haven't run through how our predictions went last week. We'll just forget because I don't think it went well.
We'll go over them on Thursday.
Oh my God.
But in the meantime, please leave a comment if you want to talk rugby. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. We're both on TikTok. Anything else to add?
No, that's it. See you later.
See you later, guys.